All right, let's get into this episode because I wanted to bring this up with you, and I know that you maybe haven't thought about it as much as I have, but I just got off one of our calls with one of our district program leaders, and they they had just come out of a meeting with superintendents, directors of other curriculum subjects, and what this particular leader was feeling a little bit frustrated because I think, and this is true almost like I think it's like widespread. It's
Mm,
widespread educational wide, and not even sometimes just educational wide. And I want to share my thought around that. But basically, this particular leader was like, people have their priorities backwards,
mm.
and it was like I'm coming out of these meetings and it's like they're continually saying like, well, what are we doing in math, what are we doing in language, what are we doing in tech, and the responses are, it seems surface level. The responses are, well, we're working on number talks, we're working on BTC, we're working on this particular curriculum, insert curriculum here, or
Mhm.
we're working on this resource, insert web resource here, right? Like they're saying specific things which are like the tools. These are tools to achieve goals, but they're not saying they're goals. They're not saying like, well, we're working on this. And right off the bat, when I was reminded of kind of this kind of like this feeling I got, and I've heard of this, in Europe, is that and it's not related to education specifically, but when I was in Italy, we went on a month ago, 2 months ago, trip to Italy for a wedding, a family wedding. And when I was over there, it felt different. Like it completely felt different. And there's a few different ways. The culture is different, obviously. The food
Sure.
culture is different, but specifically, work culture was different. And
Mm.
it felt like people were putting work as second to nature, second priority, third
So you're not
priority.
just like feeling like you were like, I was feeling different because I was on vacation. You're
Right.
saying like you
No,
were
I
actually
think
observing and trying to like observe what was going on around you in terms of how they were acting around you. Is that what you're
totally,
saying?
like people who are like there was other people who were on vacation who were from Europe or from Italy that we were chatting with, and it was just the way that they spoke about work was completely different because it's like, well, what do you do? And they're like, well, I like to recycle, I like to cook, I like to do these things. And it's like, but that's when you say, what do you do? You immediately go, job. What's my job? Right?
Mhm.
It's like, I'm a
I'm a
teacher.
teacher.
I'm
I'm a
I'm
math
a
teacher.
right. I'm a lawyer. I'm a doctor. Like you tell them your career or your job, and it's like, because we have that fundamental belief almost that work is the definition of like what we do,
Identity.
and
It's
yeah,
like you identify as that
totally,
thing, you know?
totally. And it's like, so the question becomes like, are you working? Like, are you living to work? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're here to work, or are you working to live? And over there, it was the reverse. So, like, their priorities were the opposite of our
Mm.
priorities. It seems, like we're working, we're living to work over here almost on a
Right.
regular basis. Like, why do we have the things we have? We have to go to work to get those things, and
Right.
therefore, in order to have these things, I have to work. It's like over there, it was reversed, and so why I wanted to say that was that's what's happening here. It's like when we're talking about what are we doing in our classrooms, people are stating resources and tools as the thing they're doing. But what we need to
Mm.
be doing is reversing that and going, well, why are we doing that? What is the
Right.
intentionality? Is the intentionality, and intentionality has to be around the student, the student outcomes, but specifically the student experiences. Like what is happening in our classrooms, and that's about our math practice standards, for students. It's like our mathematical proficiencies for students.
Mm.
So if we think like those should be really the focus, but people are saying the resource and saying, what are we
Right.
doing? We're focusing on the resource to get this, but it's reverse thinking, if you know what I'm saying.
I was curious, because I know we were chatting about our big idea here, and I was wondering, the Italy connection. I was like, how is he going to bring this back? But it's so interesting. So what I'm hearing you say, and I'm going to say it in a different way, and you tell me if I heard you correctly here, John. But you're going, okay, in what we'll call it Italy, but maybe it's in Europe in general.
Sure.
We don't
Sure.
know, or maybe it was just that that area that you were in, or the people you were with. These people it's almost like here we look at the very next thing in line, whereas they're taking the big end goal in mind. So it's sort of like what I'm hearing you say is, let's talk about careers for a second. Like, we have to ask ourselves like 5 whys to get to why it is we're doing what we're doing. So like, I'm a teacher. Why? Because I want to help kids. Why? Well, I do need to have a paycheck. Why do you need a paycheck? Well, I need a paycheck because I want to be able to have more, maybe, time freedom. I want to be able to, do the things I want to do in life. I want to be able to enjoy. Whereas what you're saying is, what you were recognizing there is that they had this like sort of like end goal in mind. And it was almost like you probably had to work your way backwards to kind of go like, so how are you getting to that end goal, right? Like, they're talking about freedom and being able to spend time with family and do the things you love. And now when we look at it in the math classroom specifically, and I'm sure it's in all subject areas, but math classroom totally makes sense here, because what you and I experience with so many districts that we've worked with in the past is that we hear people saying they are doing blank, they are doing this thing, but then it's like you have to ask 5 whys usually in order to get to the root of what it is we're trying to do. Of course, we want student outcomes. We want that to be the case, but it's like, but why are we doing this one action? Why does this one resource or this pedagogical move make sense to do here? And it's because it's going to help us do something usually pretty specific. It's not going to solve the answer, or it's not going to solve the problem for everything we want in a math class. Like, I might do this one thing. I might do building thinking classrooms because it's going to help students with engagement. It's going to also help them with the idea of actually becoming a better adaptive reasoner. Like, is that one of the reasons that I'm doing this? And you sort of have to go down this, well, why does that matter? Well, if students aren't able to be, good at adaptive reasoning, or they don't have a proficiency in that area, how are they going to work through unfamiliar problems when it comes to assessments, evaluations, standardized tests, all of these things, right? So it's almost like what I'm hearing you say is, it's like we're maybe being too short-sighted in terms of what we're doing in the math classroom, specifically maybe around our planning and why we're doing what we're doing. And maybe we need to think a little bit further down the road as to what is it that we're actually trying to achieve? And then how do we back map from there to figure out like, what is the thing, the move, the resource that we're going to put into place? And also, I think the key piece is, how do we make sure that everybody has that same understanding? Because if it's just everybody doing this thing, but it was John's vision and not their vision, and they don't see further than that next step, what's that result going to actually look like and sound like, 5 months from now, a year from now, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's possible, it may be likely that, say, the district, the directors of mathematics curriculum, or coordinators, or math coaches, or whoever is, designing the focus, it's also likely that, that thought is in there, and it's like, well, we know, but I think where that gets lost is when we start to answer that first question with the resource as the answer to the what are we doing, and it's like it's really almost like this mindset shift about where it's, because the scary part is, like, if I want to do building thinking classrooms, it's like, maybe I'm just doing building thinking classrooms because I heard it's a great tool or a great structure, but we have to answer that why question, or the 5 why questions. And if we are going, I'm going to grab that and then I'm going to answer the 5 questions, that's where I have the issue, right? We need to go, what is it that we really want our students to be, engaging in? And then what is the best tool to allow that? And you're right, everyone has to wrap their minds around the actual why and the intentionality before the tool. So it's really it's not a semantics thing. It's a mindset shift, that when we think about what we're doing in our classrooms, we should be thinking about the goals of our program. And the goals of our program can't be, we're using this tool, we're using this structure. It has to be about, what are we trying to change with our students, with our teachers? What is it? What are the actual outcomes that we want to see our students experience in our classrooms, those are the goals. And then we can formulate a plan and use the appropriate tools to get there, because tools are going to come and go, right? But our goals are never going to change. Like, we're always going to be like, that is the experience that we want our students to have in mathematics. And when research says maybe this other experience over here is actually better for learning, then we'll shift those goals over there, but the tools will then come and interchange. We need to continually kind of help our teachers. So if we're in our classroom, we're coaching with our classroom teachers. It's like, continually emphasize the reasoning behind the tools and not make the tools the priority and the focus. Like, teachers are going to want to make those tools the priority and focus because that's so granular. And if they know the underlying reason of the tools and they believe it and they can state it and they can say, like, that's the reason, because maybe there's a better tool to use later on, or like, hey, if this is our goal and you're saying I should use this resource or this curriculum over here, but what happens if I use this one over here? We're like, well, go ahead. It's the same goal. We're getting closer to the goal. So it's kind of just about a constant reminder to the people that we're working with, classroom teachers, maybe even reminding students, like, these are the outcomes we're after. Tools are going to come and go.
I love it, Jon. The big takeaway that I'm having, and I hope the math moment makers at home are thinking about right now, is, every move that we make in a math classroom, we should be thinking and taking inventory. And this is something we do with our district leaders through our district improvement program, is taking inventory of the things that we're doing and why we're doing them, and connecting them to what they're actually helping us to achieve. And if we've set objectives in our own classrooms, and of course across a district is really important to be doing, we should be looking at the things that we're doing right now, or maybe the new things that we want to add in, or maybe some of the things we want to let go. And we need to be clear about what they do well, maybe what they don't do so well, right? Maybe there's some drawbacks to some of the things we do in a classroom, right? Sometimes there's, good comes with some negative as well. And really taking that inventory and thinking about, like, why am I doing what I'm doing, so that I'm constantly aware of what those outcomes and those goals are. So if you haven't maybe explicitly made your plan for this next school year coming up, whether you're in the classroom, whether you're a school leader, whether you're a district leader, what you might want to do is you might want to think about, what are the big things that we've been promoting in my classroom, in my school, in my district, and start unpacking what are the good things that come from doing those pieces, and then start to see the connections and the commonalities, so that you can start looking at maybe some of those objectives and, like, pluck those objectives out and go, you know what? These are the big things that we're really after. Let's start putting those in the forefront, right?
Right.
It doesn't
Yeah.
mean we don't promote resources, that we don't promote, good practices, but we want it to start with why we're doing what we're doing. And then we introduce
Totally.
how we're going to try to get there. And the beauty is, if you go back to many of our earlier episodes where we talk about, mandating something versus making it optional, versus, like, how do we encourage people to use the tools that are going to help them get to these objectives? Well, this also gives educators the opportunity to truly use their autonomy and their professional judgment to go, you know what? If our goal is this, and I use this other tool, I can clearly articulate how this tool is going to help me achieve the same outcome that we're after with this other tool over here. And just think about how powerful that can be for your class, your grade band, your school, your district, when people start to articulate why they're doing what they're doing, instead of it becoming more of like this little fight around what resource is best and why we need to use this one over that one, or why we should ditch this one. This, I think, is a great conversation. I hope folks are going to reflect on this analogy, thinking about that why, and really, again, if I ask myself 5 whys when I think of anything I'm doing in my math classroom, ask yourself why 5 times and go down that rabbit hole, and you'll start to see some commonalities of what you truly value through your actions, even if maybe you haven't actually understood them explicitly or couldn't articulate them explicitly. This can be a really great way to almost like backwards map what matters to you in terms of your math classroom so that you can start focusing on those objectives so you can create better key results and
Love
you
it.
can see better overall outcomes in the end, which of course will be student outcomes.
Yeah. It's a paradigm shift, right? Like it's just a paradigm shift to go like I've been focusing on the leaves of the tree as the focus, and I need to shift that back and say the trunk of my tree, the leadership, the vision planning, the goal setting, the intentionality. You know, but my classroom teacher is why am I using this lesson today? What am I hoping to achieve by the end? And is this lesson the one that makes the most sense to achieve that outcome? Those set of standards or those mathematical practice standards that I want my students to be engaged in. Like that's the lesson choice that we're making instead of going, I'm going to use a 3-act math task just to have a 3-act math task, right? Like it's about intentionality, which is really the trunk of your classroom tree, which is really the trunk of your program tree if you're at the district level and thinking about those whys. So if you're thinking about those trees, focus on the trunk. It's a paradigm shift. The leaves are there, right? The leaves are going to come, but the leaves will fall off and new leaves will grow. But it's like that paradigm shift to be like, let's make sure that the trunk is solid so that we know, how this classroom and this program is going to grow. So, folks, big takeaway for you. Think about that. Um, the trunk, the limbs, the roots, all of these things play into your math classroom tree. And we want to hear about it. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, did this particular episode resonate with you? It is a little shorter than our normal episodes. If this did resonate with you, we want to hear on all social media channels at Make Math Moments. You can reach out to us or leave a comment or a review and put your comment in the review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. And make sure you hit that subscribe button or the follow button.
Hey, friends, it's episode 293. We are approaching episode 300 of the Making Math Moments That Matter podcast. So head on over to makemathmoments.com/episode 293 to check out the show notes. And of course, at all times, makemathmoments.com/report so you can get a full summary of where you are strong with your tree, your classroom tree, and where you might want to focus your attention next. makemathmoments.com/report.
Do the will until next time.
Well, until next time, Math Moment Maker friends, I'm Kyle Pierce.
And I'm Jon Orr.
High fives for us.
And a high five for you.